Today's an important day, June 19th, commemorated by the African American community and now much of America as Juneteenth, the day that the emancipation finally arrived to the slaves of Galveston, Texas, the furthest point west in the Confederacy. One of the descendants of the slaves described it this way: the way it was explained to me, the 19th of June, 1865, wasn't the exact day the Negro was freed, but that's the day that they told them that they were free. What a fascinating and true concept. The Civil War ended 2 months earlier, on April 9th, with the surrender of Robert E. Lee at Appomattox. Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation came into effect over 2 years before, January 1st, 1863. But the slaves of Galveston were not free until General Gordon Granger of the Union Army marched into Galveston and informed the slaves that they were free. There are two important lessons here. First, it took an army to ensure freedom for the slaves. Oppressors never voluntarily cease oppressing. They must be compelled to do so, preferably by nonviolent means, and if unsuccessful, by force. And second, freedom is not only a physical condition, it's also a state of mind. The slaves were not free until they were told that they were free, until they themselves believed that they were free. We learn these lessons in Judaism as well. It took the use of force, God inflicting plague after plague on the taskmasters to coerce Pharaoh to release the slaves. Pharaoh would have never freed the slaves on his own by saying, "My conviction is this is immoral and cruel." And second, the day the sea parted wasn't the exact day that the Israelites were freed. They became free when they told each other that they were free. They became free when they were finally convinced that they would never go back to Egypt, that their destiny was ahead of them in the promised land that none of them had ever seen, but were committed to nonetheless. And that element of freedom, a free state of mind, was as difficult, if not more so, than the struggle against Pharaoh. According to Jewish tradition, it took a year from the first plague to the last plague, but it took 40 years to develop a state of mind that was free. It took a year to get the slaves out of Egypt, but it took 40 years to get Egypt out of the slaves. In fact, we read in the Torah that the generation of the slaves was never truly free. Only their children, who had never seen Egypt and had never experienced the taskmaster's whip, only the children of the slaves were ready and able to enter the promised land. What transpired during those 40 years in the wilderness was discontent after discontent and rebellion after rebellion. Challenges to Moses' leadership started immediately upon the Exodus, even before the Israelites crossed the sea, and they continued until the very end. This week's Torah portion describes the worst of the rebellions. One of the leaders of the Israelites, a man named Korach, recruited 250 followers and launched a mutiny against Moses. These were the elites of Israelite society. Korach was a first cousin to Moses and to Aaron, and his followers were leaders of the community. The Torah describes them as Nesi'ei Edah Anshe Shem, princes of the people, men of renown and repute. Looking back, we can understand and even sympathize with the Israelites. Slavery was all they knew. They were not equipped to survive on their own. The wilderness was harsh, and there were constant, devastating setbacks along the way. So naturally, they rebelled against Moses, their leader. What is much harder to comprehend is the constant refrain of many of the rebels, let's go back to Egypt. Egypt was a cauldron of cruelty. Egypt was sweltering, steaming, scalding center of slavery, suffering, sorrow, sadness, and scarcity. Egypt was misery, misfortune, melancholy. Egypt was destitution, deprivation, desolation, disillusionment, depression, and despair. So challenge Moses all you want. Challenge his methods, his leadership style, his decisions, but why this fondness for Egypt? How to explain the constant obsession to return to the house of bondage? Even the construction of the golden calf, you remember that passage in the book of Exodus? Even the construction of the golden calf was really a cry to return to Egypt, to return to the old familiar ways of the worship of the gods they knew, even though these gods were no gods at all. Korach's men described Egypt. Anybody know? Anybody remember this passage? How did they describe Egypt? As a land flowing with milk and honey. The Midrash points out that two of Korach's followers, Datan and Abiram, were reluctant to leave Egypt at all. They accused Moses of treason in the following language: Ki ha'eltanu me'eretz zavat chalav u'devash lahamitenu bamidbar. You've taken us out of a land flowing with milk and honey to kill us here in the wilderness. The milk and honey of Egypt was entirely in their minds. And until the former slaves could free themselves of Egypt in their minds and in their hearts and in their souls, they could never truly be free. As we mark this important day in the history of America, and as we approach the celebration of our country's 250th birthday, we should absorb these lessons well. First, a free person is willing to fight, to win, and preserve their freedom from those who constantly seek to take it away. And second, we are not truly free until we have developed the discipline of mind and behavior of a free person through our fierce commitment to liberty and justice for all.